Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Offbeat Talks, where we look forward to looking back. Right, so by the time you watch this video, and this is something I probably should have said before, but this is gonna go up at around late September. So that's probably around the time you guys will be seeing this. And at that time, gentleman Jon Edgley Bond might not have hair on his head. How is that looking? How's the? I know you've extended the cap because you've
oh wow, yeah.
So yes,
well. So yes, it's been a turbulent couple of months for everybody, but my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. So for solidarity and to raise some money for Macmillan, I'm shaving my head and my beard. If I go beyond 1,000, I've raised about £600 at the moment. And it was my target was 5, but it happened so quickly.
Can you tell people a little bit about what Macmillan is and what it represents for the NHS?
Yeah. Well, I've learned all the time. So Macmillan is utterly amazing charity. So I only really got my head around what it was a few weeks ago. So we've been going along to meetings with the surgeons and the oncology team, and there's always a nurse present. And Fliss has got an amazing counsellor. My wife has got an amazing counsellor that she's been talking to and helping her through the process and getting her head straight from it. And I assumed, and Fliss assumed, that the nurse and the counsellor and some of the other support staff we've met were all NHS, and they're not. They are employed by Macmillan, So the surgery team and the oncology team, are the NHS, but everybody else we've been dealing with is supplied by the Macmillan charity, and they exist solely on donations. They're not given money by the NHS, and that, without getting too political, that it just tells you a lot about the state of the NHS.
I was just going to say, getting political. Does this have to do with the NHS being kind of chopped up into little bits? I've heard that phrase.
Partially chopped up. Partially chopped up. I don't understand very much about it all, but there are different sort of trusts within the NHS, and there's just no money in the NHS for the softer side of the treatment. So surgery, oncology, all the sort of really big, heavy medical stuff. That's the NHS. The softer stuff, which is just as important, I think both of us would have had a breakdown, easy or two before now, if it hadn't been for the counselling and for the nurses who are steering us through it. There's just not the money in the NHS for. There's endless debate and talk about why that is, but there's just not enough money in the NHS for that stuff. So that's Macmillan's job. So I thought it would be. I wanted to do something. I wanted to feel that I was fighting back somehow, and I thought that just trying to raise a bit of cash, if I could get mates to put in a £5 or a £10 to pay for our nurses' time, really, I would do that. And I put a target of £500, and it went to 500 within about 4 days, I think. So it's now £1,000, and that's for me. Then it's called Brave the Shave. So I'm going to shave my head, shave my beard for the first time in a couple of years. And if I get past £1,000, I will consider shaving my eyebrows as well. Because that's what's going to happen to my wife. She's going to start chemotherapy in the next few weeks. And she will lose her hair. She'll lose her eyebrows. So I thought, well, might as well do the family thing and get some cash at the same time. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
If you want to get involved and learn a lot more about this cause and what the NHS and what you can do for the NHS, have a look at the description down below in the video. We'll make sure to include as much information as we can all be educated on this matter.
Oh, mate, that's so kind of you. I wasn't expecting to talk about
please.
that. Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Thank you.
No, that's my pleasure. That's a part. This is a part of Jon Edgley Bond. So I think it's necessary, and this is partly why I started this series, is because normally what we'd seen is kind of like the stage persona, not just because it was live and on stage, but I felt that these kind of more down to earth, kind of to the point conversations are much more are more fruitful in terms of what we can all get out of it. It's a win-win and win for our audience, who will definitely have questions about stage combat and about radio shows and everything that falls within your expertise. So to that, I say I salute you, and I salute everyone in the NHS. I mean, I wish we had the NHS in Peru. That being said, this is a great country, from my perspective at least.
It's got its plus points, definitely.
Yes, absolutely. On that note, actually, I was going to say, well, you're gonna. You might then consider, if you end up shaving up your entire head, you might want to cosplay Darth Vader at some point, man. You know, when he takes off his helmet and bit of
get the scar up there.
Yeah, exactly.
All that. Yeah, that would be good. I could do that. Yeah.
Nice Halloween idea over there.
I have stood next to Chewbacca, so I've got a picture of myself.
By all means.
I got to hang out with Chewbacca. My old friend Maria is, I don't want to put her job down, but she's essentially Chewbacca's hairdresser. She made the suit, and she does all the hair for the suit. And
that must be a lot of work.
And they have like 4 or 5 of them. She does a lot of creature effects, but she was on all the new Star Wars films, Solo and all that stuff. And when they finished the last one, Rise of Skywalker, they had a big open day for friends and family, and her boyfriend couldn't make it, and she knows I'm a massive Star Wars fan. So she called me up and said, "Do you want to come along?" And I was like, "Yes, definitely." Left the kids, left my wife for the day, ran up to Shepperton, and got to hang out on set. And I've been on the Millennium. Oh, it was amazing! It was completely amazing. We're just walking around the amount of detail that goes into that stuff. You know, there's a town that they built, or part of a town that they built, and all the guys are running around, and you know, it's just amazing what they put together. And then they didn't say anything; they just took us into one of the big hangar studios. There's a big box there and a ramp going up, and I was like, "That looks a little bit familiar." And they just beckoned us in, and we walked up, and it was the Millennium Falcon. I went onto the Millennium Falcon, and I'm getting chills about it now. You know, this is something. I'm 43, so one of my earliest cinematic memories is watching Star Wars. You know, and there I was standing on the Millennium, and it was the closest thing to a religious experience I've ever had. Weirdly. Yeah, it was great. And then I got to hang out. We got to hang out with Chewbacca for a bit, and I got to talk in Wookiee to him. It was brilliant. Brilliant.
God.
Brilliant.
Well, little fun fact: Ewoki's language is a mixture between Tibetan, Mongolian, and Nepali languages, recorded in and like sampled in different orders. Yeah, of course.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
You wouldn't know that. And I mentioned this because I know you're a Star Wars buff, but also because that's part of Fitzrovia's work. You know, sampling sounds and testing stuff out. So
mixing things together and trying to create something. The Star Wars, even in the 1970s, were doing things in a much more high-tech manner. But definitely that idea of watching the documentaries about how they make the sound of the laser beams and the ships and all putting together various different sounds and trying to make something new. Have an influence.
There's this whole website dedicated to Ben Burtt, who's the sound designer for the original trilogy, and kind of like breaks down. So it's got bites of the sounds, and it breaks down how they're created. It's amazing. Like I didn't know such a thing. I mean, you get taught, and this is the thing about university. Like you get taught the basics, but when you go out in the field, you kind of have to make do with what you have. And if you have what you have is a bowl of cornflakes, and you have to make it sound like there's a spirit vanishing in a tomb.
Yeah, or it's actually sort of the other way around. If somebody writes a spirit vanishing, and all you can afford is a bowl of cornflakes, you've got to make that work. It's kind of that. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. That there's a marked difference between, especially when you're working in medium to small scale or independent theatre, where there's the only way you get money is by people seeing your show. Every single penny matters, you know, and paying the actors is, in my opinion, the most important thing. That my particular school of theatre is basically, you know, if you've got some actors and a van, you can do a show, and that's all you really need. You know, set is nice, costume is nice, and it all adds to the world. But right at the heart of it, you need a good script, a really good script, and some actors. Go, you know. So yeah, but yeah, then when you've got to make, I don't know, the sound of reality tearing, or a giant squid attacking Bristol Suspension Bridge, or something like that, and you've literally just got what you can find in your house, or buy from a pound shop down the road, or steal from a skip, which we've done, then you have to sort of use your imagination. And I don't you know, going back to the Star Wars guy, that's kind of what they were doing.
Yeah.
And they're, you know, making laser beam sounds by going up to electrical cabling and hitting it with a fork. You know, or I think that the sound of some of the doors opening is just part of that sound, is just a piece of A4 paper coming out of an envelope.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's as simple as that. I mean, it's not just that. They've layered it.
Yeah, no, of course. You
Post,
but there's a lot of sound engineering behind it.
Yeah. But the basis of it is all that stuff. And I think that's one of the skills that I guess I've learned over the last 12 years, especially. Try not to do it all the time, but taking a sound and breaking up into its component parts, deconstructing the sound, and then reconstructing it with several different objects and actors. You know, it's sort of, and that's exactly what they do. You know, trying to think of a good example. So they're tearing the hole in reality. So we have a story called "The Man Who Was 10 Minutes Late," which is about a Second World War test pilot who breaks the sound barrier in his experimental plane, tears a hole in reality, and actually accidentally creates an evil Nazi doppelganger of himself that travels everywhere 10 minutes in front of him. You know, so ruining his life. But this, you know, the plane was just pots and pans jiggling at greater speed. We had a desk fan for the engine. We shook the actor around to get the scene when it was accelerating, and more pots and pans, and then we had a metal board, a thin metal board for the sound of the airplane going through reality. Balloons popping for pistol shots and all that stuff.
Cabbage stabbing.
Cabbage is our good friend. Okay, yeah, it's specific. There's a specific cabbage that we use. Mm-hmm. We went through several different iterations of different kinds of cabbage, and the Jama cabbage is the best, in our opinion, the best cabbage for punching and stabbing and things like that. There's a certain I don't know, texture, water, sort of content, kind of stiffness to it. There's more water
of the cabbage.
Yeah, it has a really, and they fall apart quite beautifully as well, because that's the other thing with the radio hour that we have to consider, is it's not just the best sound effect, it's the best visual effect as well. There's lots of things that we could have done by recording something, or and playing it back, or using something obvious, but like the gunshot, for example, is probably a good one. We always use balloons popping, which isn't necessarily the best gunshot sound you'll ever hear. They need to get the balloon, and it's too variable as well, because depending on how much air is in the balloon and how far you are away from the microphone, it can sound a little bit weak. But if you've got a gunfight and you have 15 balloons, it looks amazing and sounds good enough. So a lot of what we've done is a balancing act between the most interesting visual effect and the best sound effect. But the Jama cabbage is the zenith of those two things, I think.
A great demonstration, if people want to check out the Edinburgh 2011 comedy Fitzrovia Radio Hour on YouTube. It's got all the magic behind it, and you can see all the characters while at the same time keeping up with the script, while at the same time doing all the sound effects right at the hopefully the correct distance from the microphone. So we'll get to that in a second, because I find that fascinating. But apart from Star Wars, you had the VHSs, I presume. I'm kind of doing the math there. It should be the VHSs, or
Well, actually, it was Betamax. My dad was a big fan of Betamax, so VHS was the poor cousin. But yes, videotape was. Yeah, my dad insisted on Betamax. Yeah.
what? So your dad was a film buff. I can conjure. From that.
Yeah, he was here. He was really keen on film.
What was entertainment like in the Edgley Bond household?
What was it? There was lots of film going around. Not very much theatre. My dad was a pianist, so and he was keen at playing the piano, not a pianist. You know, if there's a difference. I was left my own devices to watch films and sink into my imagination a lot. We had a huge. Thinking about it, Dad would record almost everything that was interesting. You know, he would mark up the paper and we'd have stacks of these old Betamax tapes that he would record over, and sometimes we'd have 2 or 3 films on one tape. So there was lots of that about, you know. And then we lived in various houses in the countryside, so then it was, you know, it was watching films and then going out into the fields and getting sticks to pretend to be knights. You know, that was basically done.
Did you play a knight, like playing like a soldier, like a medieval knight as a kid? You have like wooden swords and whatnot.
So we'd go off into the fields, and, you know, I'd take a dustbin lid and get a branch, and my brother would do the same thing, and then we'd run around battering the crap out of each other for hours. Yeah.
Now you'd probably be able to win in a fair and square sword fight with him.
No, he's massive. He's absolutely massive.
Fair. He'll probably just charge at you and then.
No.
No stick. Stick can save you there.
Yeah. I got to about 14, and he's 3 years younger than me. And I got to about 14, and he got bigger than me. So I was like, let's just not anymore. Yeah.
Let's just be nice to each other.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. And I bring this up because you voiced last year, and for all gamers out there, you voiced Malice Darkblade, a big DLC character for the Total War 2 franchise. Now, I'm a big fan myself. But did you play? So I'm like meeting you. I was like, that's so cool. He's such a great DLC character.
He's so much fun.
And I mean, you don't get to actually sword fight. Did you do any like action live recording, or was it just the voice?
No, it's just the voice. They'd done all the animation
Right.
prior to it, and I think they do a mixture at Creative Assembly, and I think there was some little bits of mocap somewhere, but I think a lot of it is traditional computer animation on that game. I know things like they did the Alien
what's
game,
it called?
huge Alien game.
Yeah.
Few years ago.
It's Alien Isolation.
That's the one. And there was a lot of mocap in that, but I was just the voice of Malice for that. It was a hoot. You know, I love doing voice work. I love it. You know, I can basically be in my tracksuit and t-shirt in a box going mental. It's a lot of fun.
And Malice is like what my generation will probably get to know is the closest thing is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. With spirits and fighting it all. But, you know, those are recurring stories in a sense. What stories did you pick up as a child? Obviously, you had movies and whatnot, but and obviously Warhammer started as a tabletop game.
Yes.
But in terms of like your alone time as a kid, if you were not playing with your brother, were there like much reading, novels, magazines? Pulp magazines by any chance? That would be a nice coincidence.
Actually not so much pulp magazines. No, I read the things I really keyed into from the age of about 9 was things like Tolkien, and I remember reading every single Dick King Smith book. I don't know if you are familiar with Dick King Smith. He basically wrote stories about anthropomorphic animals. So he had a whole series about there was cats on an island and a pig who wanted to be a sheepdog and all these things.
That sounds oddly Lovecraftian, to bring another name in the mix.
I guess it's kind of, it's much less terrifying than Lovecraft. They're all quite sweet stories. They're cool stories, you know. yeah, Dick Smith and Watership Down I read a lot, and then I got hugely into Terry Pratchett when I was about 10 or 11, and read everything that I could find on him. They're the big ones, I guess. I've still got my copy of my one edition copy of Lord of the Rings that's got no cover on it, and it's got my notes in it from when I was trying to learn to speak Elvish. I found, flicking through a couple of years ago, I was like, oh my God, I'd forgotten I'd done that. I'd actually, learned to speak a bit and write a bit of Elvish when I was probably 12.
Well, you did play an elf yourself. That's Malice is a dark elf in the...
A dark elf, yes.
They speak English, they don't speak Elvish, or not,
no,
from what I remember.
Yes, it's slightly.
Or did you record
version.
any Elvish?
No, it was all in English. Yeah, a lot of battle cries. He's a really interesting character, this sort of tortured soul. But just really, but that's the thing, he enjoys being tortured. So
yeah, there's this thing in nature, what's it called, when two animals kind of depend on each other. You're like the bull,
symbiosis.
The little bird. Symbiosis. That's a good word.
Yeah,
it's a good word to have. And so then, I mean, where do then we make the link from a kid that is quite as active and outdoorsy, if you were, chasing your brother around, but also, dedicating time inwards and, kind of looking and reflecting with his stories. How do you then get drawn into acting?
I guess that's a good question. There's a couple of things. So we moved a lot. We moved every couple of years. I think I went to some of it, I can't remember, 7 or 9 schools. So it was every couple of years we would move. I discovered theatre as a way of feeling a sense of community, getting people to know who I was in a school. So if you're with a group of people, and the environment in theatre when you're that age is very open, and it's kind of, it's intimidating being the new kid all the time. And being in an accepting environment was I found very cool. And also then you being on stage, and then you feel like you're playing catch up. It's like a shortcut to everybody knowing you. You walk into a new school and there's however many 100 people there, and the feeling that I had anyway, or the feeling that one has, is that everybody knows each other and everybody has a history. So the idea of being on stage and part of theatre meant that I was, it was a shortcut to catching up for me to feel like everybody knew me. There's that. There was, I'm really clumsy as well, and I stuttered slightly. Not all the time, just tends to be when I get nervous and tired. So being able to rehearse what I was doing and not walk into the table and not stumble on my line, on my words, or get tongue-tied was great. I get to do this little thing 30 times and I can get it right, and then I won't fall over or say the wrong thing, so that was kind of cool. I'm dyslexic as well. I'm really quite dyslexic. So there's the sort of, particularly when I sort of found Shakespeare when I was about 14, 15, it's kind of this foreign language, and it's a foreign language, it's halfway between Old English and modern English.
Taking into account you were trying to learn Elvish yourself.
Yeah, and it's learning the world, I guess. One of going back to the books thing, I got really into, I've never really thought about this before, but a lot of the books I got into were series of books. So The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, Dick Smith, well, they're all essentially in this slightly, it's kind of a nice version of the Watership Down animals, the books. It's kind of more of a kid's version of that, and the Watership Down, big old book. And then Terry Pratchett, this entire world. So I think, and this is similar with Shakespeare. It is like going into, you've got these 37, 39 plays, depending on who you think wrote them, or and it's a world and a puzzle, I guess, a shibboleth, is the word. You know, this sort of secret language that and the very theatrical. So that I found the process of like the first reading of whatever Shakespeare playing, just going, I have zero idea of what that means, and then learn working it out to a stage where I could not only understand it, but I could hopefully, or the aim was to speak it like I was just thinking of it at the time. That's a cool process, and I still find that interesting. Now, I directed a couple of Shakespeare plays for students at the East 15 drama school just before lockdown, and it was still we did Comedy of Errors and we did The Tempest, and the process of taking these two shows, cutting them down to an hour, and me being ready as a director for the students so I could lead the way and suggest things. It was a fascinating process. I loved it, you know. And this is after, well, I'm 43 and 30 years, I guess. Yeah, gosh, yeah.
So then you went off to Bristol. You travelled yet again.
I did, but that was. So I didn't go straight from school. I started Bristol when I was 26. 26. So I had a failed attempt at an academic degree at university, and well, it was a theatre studies degree, but it was a sort of academic study of theatre. Theoretical. A lot of that, yeah, lots of lectures and things, and by that point when I was about 15, 16, there was a sound and lighting company in the local town, and I was at school with one of the nephew of the guy that ran it, and his dad was lighting designer. So I kind of ended up working for them. One of my first jobs was ever, instead of working behind a bar or doing a paper round, was working for a lighting and sound company. So I used to help out setting up all that stuff, and you know, I was used to. And there was a semi-professional theatre company. I say semi-professional. They got paid in beer, basically. We'd do a Shakespeare play and tour around a pub, and we'd get a free meal and a pint afterwards. And for an 18-year-old, that's really cool. I really enjoyed. Yeah, that's the kind of this is what it is to be an actor. Mm. But I got to do Measure for Measure and a couple of other and Richard the Third and some really cool plays with them. So I was quite used to being around theatre and making. And then because my parents were more keen on my academic stuff, there was this kind of loggerheads discussion about what I should do. And the theatre studies degree for me was a kind of halfway house. It's like, I'll do a degree in it, but I want to do theatre, and it didn't work. It didn't work. I had about a year and a half there, and then I dropped out and lived in Huddersfield for a couple of years after that, which is where I was. Then I moved to London. What did I do? I did a little bit of a photojournalism course. You could sign on. I was, signing on at the time, so I was getting benefit, as they call it at the moment. So I signed on to a photojournalism course for a bit, and then I managed to land a job as a runner on a show called Changing Rooms. I don't know if you know of that. So basically, designers go to somebody's house and they ruin it in a comedy way, over a weekend. So we'd all turn up. People want their houses doing, and I just help build things and make things, and then we go off. So it was a weekend job for a while, and then I ended up working in TV production on and off for a couple of years, as well as doing theatre and education tours and things like that, trying to work out which way I wanted to go. I didn't know whether I wanted to be in production and direction or being an actor, and a lot of that to do was with confidence. I think at the end of the day, I think I wanted to be an actor, but I was like, I know I can get work in lighting and sound and production. So it took a couple of years. So yeah, I moved to London in 1999 when I was 23, and then it was 2 years of kind of working out what I really wanted to do. And it was at least have a shot and get into the drama school I wanted to go to.
And in those years, what kept you going despite kind of exploring, or what some people would just say wandering around, like in a place of instability in a sense? And I say this because we have this I think, mistaken idea that you have to finish this preset education, as for as important as education is, or that you have to stick with the degree that you originally chosen. That is the path you're following. Some people get really kind of stuck in that sense. So hearing that a degree didn't work for you, and then you kind of wandered off and did your own thing. That's
I think things. I think you guys have got a whole different set of pressures on you, financial pressures on you. Like when I went to university, my year, this is in what, 1996.
Wasn't even
wow. That's a long time ago now. Wow. 1996 was the last year we got full grants, you know. So you could, if you were careful and had a job on a Saturday night, you could basically go to university and come out with no debt. You know, and loans were just starting to come through. And I think after I technically left university, I got all the loans I could and still took my grant. So I could, it's like, but I'm not going to go, you know, and it took 15 years to get them paid back. But so I think there was less pressure back then to get the right degree and do it, you know, and there was a much more of a sense of education for education's sake, you know, that at, well, I don't know, 18, 19 now, you're going to university, it's going to cost you a lot of money. You are going to come out with debt. So you're already thinking in your first year about how to pay it off, which changes it. You know, going, like my friend Dan went to study ancient Norse, you know, did a degree in ancient Norse. Like, there aren't many jobs out there. But it's taught him about the basis of English, the basis of several different languages, and he can make himself understood in several places in Northern Europe because of it. And an understanding of Shakespeare and all that stuff that's fed into him being an actor. Now I think there's just pressure on the degree. Costs a lot of money. You need to pay the money back. Does that make sense? It's just kind of, I don't agree with it. You know, I think it puts too much pressure on you guys too early.
And while the solution is certainly political in that the change against that, should enough people in Britain want to pursue that, then while the change to pursue is political, from an individual point of view, what could you say to the starting actor that kind of has that kind of anxiety in those early days? If you could offer some advice.
I think it's completely normal to feel that anxiety and feel that thing of imposter syndrome, you know, that acting is impossible. It's not for me. I don't look like Hugh Jackman, so I'm not going to be, you know, an actor. You know, I don't look like Benedict Cumberbatch or whoever you want to, you know, pick a handsome, well-known, or a good-looking, well-known actor. And, you know, I don't look like that. I'm not like that. So it's fine because there's a pressure on it as well. It's like running away and joining the circus, you know. But the sooner that you can get your head around that it is a real job, people really do it. And it's not just about being famous. In fact, it's not at all about being famous. You know, all the best actors, you know, that I know and know of, are pursuing being really good at acting and finding out what they are as a product in a marketplace, so that they can get work to pay their bills, doing something that they really enjoy. You know, rather than chasing fame. A couple of the guys who I've known and have met who are better known, the fame of it is kind of more of a byproduct, an accident, you know, an unfortunate byproduct of what they want to do, of what they do. Yeah, and then it's how you measure success, I think, is a lot of it. You know, you wouldn't really know me from Adam, but you know, I've been working in theatre doing my own thing and doing other things for other people for a long time, and that's fine. You know, facilitation of events and teaching and directing and doing all that stuff, it's all within the same thing. So basically, if you can't not do it, do it. You know, and I've tried to not do it over the years. You know, I tried to work in telly and be a producer. I tried to be a motorcycle instructor. Tried to do all this other stuff, and I always end up coming back to theatre at the end of the day. You know, so I can't not do it. It's annoying.
And in those theatre adventures, to put it in a way, because from the sounds of it, then you then floated around different kind of places, as well as not just in terms of moving and whilst you were still finding what you wanted to do, but also floated different professions within the arts industry, in the performance, as big a scope as that might be. I want to ask you about a couple specific ones, projects. Tell us about the gunpowder plot at the Globe.
That was great fun. So the 15-minute gunpowder plot. So yes, that was for Fireworks Night in, was it 2005, I think. It was a lovely little project. It wasn't huge, so it was, but it was loads of fun. So we had a short script that was written by the guy who was put it together, written in blank verse about the story of the gunpowder plot. And he basically he kind of didn't direct it. He was sorting out all the costumes and working out how it was all going to work, and he just left us to get on with self-directing it, putting it together. And the idea was that there were two casts, and we were going to be performing this show 4 or 5 times on opposite sides of the Thames, one outside the Globe, either side of Millennium Bridge. So one by the Globe and one just by St Paul's Cathedral. And this show would go on so people could see it, walk across and see the other one. So there must have been about 8 of us, maybe 10 of us involved. 2 casts of 4 or 5. And we basically, we sat around talking about how we do it, and the director guy was just sort of coming in and out and going, "Oh, hello, how's it going?" And then he'd go off and go, "Try this, you know, come in with a costume." I'm like, "What are we going to do? We're on Friday." You know, so because we had about 5-6 days rehearsal to put this whole thing together, maybe a bit more, but not much. And we sat around for the first morning going, yeah, and trying to be directors about it. Nothing was happening. We were just sort of sitting down. We could do this, we could do that, we could do that. Somebody suggested that rather than trying to be directors, we all just were actors. So what we did was, one cast would sit down and the other cast would go up and just muck about, you know. And then if something worked, the other cast would go, "Great, I'm having that." If you saw something, the basic rule was, if you saw something you wanted to steal from the other actor, that was going to go into the show, basically. So then we'd swap and run the scene again, and you'd see them steal your idea and they'd do something else and go, "Right, I'm going to nick that." And that's how we built the show. It was absolutely wonderful. It was a really lovely experience, sort of building this thing together. You know, I'm still in touch with the guy who was playing Catesby as well, Simon. And we're still mates 15 years later because of that show. And then, yeah, we performed it. My mum turned up and got involved in the performance. She came out and she was sort of right at the front, so I introduced her to everybody. And then we did it 4, 5, 6 times. We were exhausted on either side. And then we went into the main house at the Globe, which is a gorgeous space if you've not been. It's an amazing building. And the 2 casts got on stage and we flipped a coin to see who would do the show in front of the audience, and my cast lost, so Simon got to do it. Yeah, I know, it's really annoying. But yeah, it was loads of fun. We just like loads of silly ideas in it, so that the end, you know, the final scene is this bit where Catesby and all the guys burst out of this barn, all guns blazing, you know, and the government forces are there, and there's basically this shootout, you know, Western style shootout.
Yeah.
And I know I can claim the idea because I was modest about it once and Simon pulled me up on it, but I had the idea that I think I'd just been watching Spaced or something, the lovely Simon Pegg sitcom. And I just thought, why don't we just do it in slow motion? That would be fun. Because we had no set, we had no nothing. So it was like, so we did this thing, we were all hiding behind our capes when we came out, and it was just all that stuff, throwing grenades in slow motion. It's so much fun. So much fun. And entirely historically accurate as well.
100%.
But yeah, it was a really good, fun show that we put together very quickly without a director. And I can't remember one argument from it. Like you'd have thought that if you stick 10 actors or 8 actors in a room together and tell them they've got 8 days to get a 20-minute shows together, you thought it would be all fighting, but it was just laughter all the way. It was just everybody fooling around trying to come up, and do better than the other guy. Take somebody's idea and build it and make it funnier or make it tell the story better. Yeah, loads of fun.
Yeah, Picasso was quoted as saying, "Good artists borrow, great artists steal."
Yeah,
that's I've heard that, and there's been a couple of guests in the show that have said, "Yep, 100% about best ideas are stolen." Just,
yeah, but if you steal from 3 different sources, it's inspiration. That's the thing. Just if you steal from one person, it's plagiarism. Steal from 3 people, mix it up a little bit.
Or 3 separate copyright filings against you.
Yeah. Just enough so you don't get sued. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, onto that actually, and how old were you when you did that show?
I must have been 29.
2005. That's 29. Okay.
Yeah. So my birthday's at the end of September.
Okay.
And it was November 2005. So yeah, 29. Yeah.
Okay. And because see that along with all the things I've read on your tour, on Fitzrovia's tours to Edinburgh, I think it's like, this sounds like just any other young company that goes up to Edinburgh and just has a good time. Everyone has a good time in Edinburgh if they set their minds to it. But and like you said, there's different priorities. There's different, like your generation and my generation they've grown with different worries and anxieties.
Yeah.
And to that, I was going to say, do you perceive that, say, my generation, I don't know what they call people from like the late 90s, like 96, 97, 98, like whatever we're called, but that nomenclature, I'm sure the name will come to mind. And
well, you guys, aren't you like post millennials? I don't know.
Yeah, something along them lines.
I was shocked to find out I was Generation X. I'm the last year. I was born in 1976. I am the last year of the Generation X's. I didn't know that until quite recently.
Yeah, no, I didn't even know that these ways of classifying people by their ages existed in the first place. But I think it's a lot to do with how our generations relate to each other as well. It's like, okay, boomer, it's like, yeah, sure, all right, whatever, you 60-year-old person who probably has not my same viewpoints of the world. And
it sort of, I think it shifts when people identify that there is a major new influence on you. So I mean, you won't, if you were born 90, when were you born? 97. Wow. Okay. Sorry to say wow, but yeah, I remember. Yeah,
No,
I have a motorcycle that's older than you. I do. It still works. Fine. You won't really remember a time when there wasn't mobile phones. You probably won't. Or the mobile phones were common. So I remember mobile phones coming in the late 80s. My dad had one for
it's
work.
like one of them bricks one, right?
Brick one.
Yeah.
You can edit that out, or not. Prick. But the sort of things like mobile phones and the internet and things like, I remember people teaching me. There's this thing called the internet. There's this thing called email, and it's new. It's like sending a letter, but through the telephone. You know, all that stuff, but all that kind of thing is now normal. And you look at my eldest son; he was born in 2016. You know, so it's kind of
4 years old.
Yeah, but you know, so he's, I think, roughly as far apart from you as you are from me, right?
Yeah.
And he will have no recollection of a time without iPad and Siri and those things, which, you know, things like Siri are still relatively new, and I'm assuming relatively new for you. You remember a time before that, and it's kind of, oh, I can now talk to my phone, you know. And Ethan it's completely normal for him, and I think that's where it comes from. And I think it's just sad that the sort of okay boomer, yeah, whatever millennial is present. There's not an understanding between them. And there is a joke about, you know, millennials and boomers shouting at each other, and the Generation X is in the middle going, what? Well, you know, just hands up and say, okay, fine.
And well, kind of our age range is one that you have lived. You are still young enough to kind of understand technology.
Yeah.
But not in the millennial way where you're just lost and you don't know how to do, you know, what these whiz kids can do right now. Nor am I too young to remember a time before we all lived connected to the cloud. You know, I had cassettes, I had VHSs, you know, so like my very first album was the Beatles' Red Album compilation, the Red Album and the Blue Album, and that was on cassette, and I had to use a pencil or my finger to kind of rewind the cassette, and that was a great memory.
But one of the things I can't get my head around is growing up and being 12 and 13 and 15 and 19, and everything being so public. This is the thing that it was a big realization for me a couple of years ago. It's like, you know, Facebook comes in what, 2000, it was in 2007. By 2009, it's kind of everybody's using it. I remember I remember it happening. You know, we had some promotional success with the radio hour because of it. You know, it's part of our early success was Facebook. And you go, wow, there's, like, you were what, 10 when it came in.
I was probably, I was still in primary school, so that was probably 10.
Yeah, and so people of your age are kind of, you're in all the embarrassing shits you did when you were 13, 14. Nobody remembers. Me, there might be a photograph in an album somewhere of me vomiting on the floor or something, but whatever, falling over, or kissing a girl I shouldn't have done, or not kissing a girl I should have done, or something, you know, all the rank stupidity we get up to in our preteen and teenage and beyond years that you know, even a year later you're hideously embarrassed about. I had a chance of the entire world not knowing that it had happened.
Now you're caught on someone's smartphone, and then that's it. You're done.
And that's it. It's out on the internet. It could be there forever. Yeah, it's public, and that is a very interesting and terrifying thing for me to be, that there is this kind of, I don't want to say conservatism with a small c, about it, that you have to be guarded in a way that me growing up in rural Suffolk, Nottingham and places like that in the 80s and early 90s, late 80s and early 90s, which was when I was, you know, 12, 13, 15, 16, that there was a pressure that it didn't even occur to me that anything I was doing was in any way important to anybody, or would be out there. It just
now
wasn't.
We're a lot more interconnected as well. Like you can find out what everyone else is doing, and also, and I think that point on everything being public helps this generation to, at least on Twitter and Facebook and other social media platforms, to hold politicians accountable in a sense. Like you can take an extract from something they said back in the 90s and use it against them, or in the more extreme cases you cancel them. In the more probably not benign, I would say, but within the realm of criticism, you can still say, hey, listen, you contradicted yourself because you said this, this, and this. And they go,
Yeah.
and then the boomers in Congress, and I'm thinking in America, they, you know, when they interviewed, what was it? They had Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, they had like the big tech titans in Congress. They brought them in. And a lot of the questions by the old Republicans and Democrats was like, so why is my phone showing these pictures of me? And I say, sir, that's you have to ask Google for that, but that's not something they control anyway.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so it's like the tides have turned in that you now know more than the guys you think know best.
Yeah. Well, you have the sum total of human knowledge in your fingertips, you know, and you know, you were all walking around with things that are more powerful, 10 times more powerful than the computer that was on board the first ever spaceship, all that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
There is that, and I think that is good, that direct access to politicians and to people of power, that you can just, hello Mr. Zuckerberg, what about this, or hello Mr. Trump, or whoever you want to.
Do you feel my generation is more political or politicized?
Yes, I do. Yes, yeah, I do. I genuinely do. I think from my experience of, and I've been privileged to be, you know, teaching people around, or working with, I won't say teaching, directing people.
You don't consider yourself a
age.
teacher, more of a
I don't
director,
like the term
pedagogue?
for what I do. I don't like doing it. Obviously, I'm at East 15 as part of the University of Essex, and I don't bill myself as a teacher when I go in there, because what I want to be doing is getting these guys ready for the professional world, you know. And if I go in saying, yes, I'm Mr. Bond, your teacher, it's not the relationship that they're going to be having with the directors out there. So I'm going in and I'm directing, and I want their ideas, and I want them to get ready for, you know, their first auditions and their first jobs and things like that, and to strip away that authority. So yeah, I don't like calling myself a teacher in that context.
And you feel that they are, via the experience you've had with them, that my generation is more politicized?
I think you are. Yeah, I think, yes, certainly. I'm sure there's people of my age, and I know people of my age who are very political. So there's probably several people who would argue the point with me, but from my experience from me and the people that I was close to when I was 12 through to 20 something, you know, the you guys have more access, easier access to that kind of thing, and are more switched on and less apathetic about things. Like I grew up when we had the Conservative government from the mid 70s to the mid 90s. You know,
Thatcher, wasn't it?
Thatcher, yeah,
Thatcher years,
yeah. So I was 21 when the Labour government took over, and I'd never known anything different. So there was a thing of it being impossible, and it was just the way things were, I think. But yeah, now yes, the you guys, people of your age range seem more proactive, and I think that's the thing, is that there does seem to be a culture of proactivity, and
you see the demonstrations in America, in Britain,
and in Britain, and before lockdown, there's so I did a lot. When did I start at East 15? First thing I started was, so a year and a half, 18 months ago was the first project I did. And right from the beginning, there were really delicate, intelligent, considerate conversations around the idea of race and racism, you know, and expectations and things, which is part of the nature of the show we were doing, was comedy about race. And it was a script that had been written 10 years previously, and there's been the conversation has changed so much that I was really curious about where things shifted, and how to make the jokes in there land correctly, or the themes within that land correctly. And there were some really, really good discussions around that. And I don't think I would have had that level of, at 22, 23, that level of knowledge to have the conversations that these 24-year-olds, 23-year-olds were having. And that is, I think, down to the positives of worldwide communication and Twitter and things like that, because that information is just at you more. I think there are a lot of negatives too, but it's always a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so,
and obviously this time has been politically charged, obviously for different reasons.
Yeah.
Probably the one that baffles me a lot was Americans protesting during the lockdown, where they were saying like, no, it's our freedom to be outside, or a group of Americans saying like, yeah, it's part of like, it's our liberty to be out there. But the discussion, and I think this is a point where, while we're not talking about theater specifically, I think it's very useful for our audience to know, is that there is always nuance in everything, because just like those same people are protesting their freedoms, and we think of, oh, look, Americans talking about their freedoms as if, you know, as if they're the center of the world, or that's kind of how we characterize them, or the caricature of them. On the other hand, they could also just be the earliest people saying, right, I'm running out of money. There is no government help, and I kind of need to protest out there. There was certainly a lot of snobbery in saying like, oh, I want to get my Starbucks and whatever. But I do think, and especially seeing how things are now in America, and the paychecks have run out and the government's not sorted anything, that was the earliest form of despair. There was two readings of the situation, is what I'm trying to say. Like, not everyone is so and so, and we have to go deeper.
But you've also got the thing of different people of different opinions protesting for the same cause. You know? So you've got, you know, guys who are genuinely a little bit nutty, or I would describe them as a little bit nutty, protesting their freedom to walk around with no mask in groups because freedom. And then, you know, protesting the same things as guys who are, and I got into some discussions early on in lockdown with a friend of mine, or an acquaintance of mine who works in finance, and it's like the longer lockdown goes, the more time people are suffering. So there's a different, going out and saying we should stop lockdown and move things on is not necessarily an indicator that you are a crackpot. Because there isn't the government support more here or in America. You know, there isn't a great willingness to support. Again, there's a lot of nuance, and
I think the honourable gentleman Craig McKinley would disagree with us, wouldn't he?
My local MP, yes.
Oh God.
I don't know how he feels about. He definitely wants to get some of the businesses going, but he and I have had a couple of email exchanges over the last couple of years, and yes, we see a lot of things very differently. Yes, I do actually think, with all there is an irony that I realised, quite a beautiful irony, in that the area in which I live is, I live in Margate, which is on the Isle of Thanet in Kent. It's not actually an island anymore, but it used to be. And it's where UKIP started and had a first stronghold in my area, which includes Ramsgate. And, you know, obviously Brexit is happening, and at the moment it's happening, and it's voted for and all that. One of the major plans post-Brexit is to create a lot more free ports in the UK and in England, which means that goods can come in and go without any tax. So if you're making a car, you can get your sheet steel, land it on it without paying tax, move it, make the car and send it off, and there's no extra money, you know, to keep things open. Ramsgate is going to be a free port. So the heart of Brexit is going to end up, the way they get around it is to make that port not legally in the UK. So the heart of Brexit is going to be not legally in the UK. I think there's a nice irony in that. There's one thing that makes me smile, you know, about the situation.
I saw some of the back and forths. not the back and forth, probably mostly your end and your rambling about, yeah, you know, here's this guy, here's MP Craig McKinley very casually dismissing racism, or what was it?
Oh yeah.
As an outsider to all this, you know, it's so awfully funny. And I picked the word awfully funny because it's so very British as well.
Yeah.
My girlfriend is what you would describe a proper Northern Labour girl, and he's from Liverpool, and she doesn't. Oh, lovely place. Well, as a Beatles fan, that's like heaven for me. Yes, of course it would be. I've visited the cavern as many times as I can remember.
Good.
No, lovely place and lovely people. That side of the north. I've not been to Manchester or the other places, so I probably wouldn't
Manchester's cool as well. I lived in Huddersfield for a long time, so yeah, it's Manchester, Sheffield, and Leeds. I can
Nice.
vouch for the people there as well.
Anyone watching us from up north, please leave your comments down below. We love you all very much. But the point I was trying to make is that her viewpoint on things is probably more shaped by her. Look, she's doing a law degree. She's about to finish actually, and so she makes decisions based on what the law is. And I remember when trying to visit each other, she was like, but right now legally it's not possible to do this, and I was like, I just won't see you, right? So that's kind of like the both ends of the argument. And when talking anything politics, she would bring up the legal background behind it, and she would go, well, that makes no. Why is he saying this if it's illegal to do this, or this type of law? It's like, but we probably don't know it, hon. It's probably whoever the staff is then going to remind us, sir, you can't actually promise these things because it will end up resulting into this. So most likely it's just I'm thinking, and then. But then when she does get angry at things, and she has the most eloquent cursing that I've heard with a northern accent, which makes it the more entertaining. The back and forth on the name calling and everything, as an outsider, is oh so funny. But at the same time, probably not awfully productive.
No, but it can help sometimes.
To relieve the tension.
You've got nothing else to do.
That and football.
There's been some. Yeah. I think I know the thread that you're talking about. There was Craig McKinley. It was he said he wanted to have a sculpture park in Ramsgate. Anybody who wanted to get rid of their statues could send them to Ramsgate, and he was good. There's a boating pool in Ramsgate, and there was going to be a public outdoor sort of, send us all your criminals, and your war criminals, and Nazi statues, and the Confederate statues, and we'll stick them up in the centre of Ramsgate, and then we can charge people a £5 to come and have a look at them. And it's like, what? Oh, Lord. What? I do not want to. Go down to the boating pool and be looking at whoever, Coulston or whoever, it's a very, having a specific museum in a building where it's all kind of, these are statues of, this is a statue of the slave owner from Bristol who did this, that's a cool idea, but don't stick them up in the middle of the town square. It's like there's a different weighting then, isn't there? There's putting them up in the middle of the town. We put statues up in the middle of the town to honor people. You put the things in a museum because you want to look at the past. Which is then going the whole nonsense about learning history from statues.
Or you can just, send them to Craig McKinley's backyard, and you'll probably have them there very happily.
What was that? That was amazing.
What was it? It was the Roman emperor, wasn't he? Some Roman, and he had paint all over, and he salvaged it. I think
I spent about 2 days looking up, trying to find that statue, and I can't remember who. It was.
I don't remember the name now.
Yeah, he was saying it was Julius Caesar, and are we going to get rid of am I to take down this statue of Julius Caesar because he killed some Gauls? It was about the Coulston thing, and then, you know, it was like, A, it's in your back garden. B, I think it looks like you bought it from B&Q in 1986. C, it ain't Julius Caesar. You know, so it was just like, it wasn't a very intelligent, no, I'll take that back. Yeah. It wasn't a very well thought through thing to say, because it was just, it read more like him just trying to needle people, which I don't think was very good constructive.
No, exactly. That's the thing. When you start ridiculing, and again, but that's the thing. You guys are so good at it. Like, you guys are so good at name calling and curse. I remember when in Parliament.